Our next guest is Wolfe Pereira, the CEO and co-founder of Encantos, a story teaching platform that empowers creators from around the world to help kids learn 21st century skills. Welcome, Stephen. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I was reading about what you do in your company, but can you just tell our viewers how you are kind of reimagining education and what your company does?
Absolutely. Well, it took a global pandemic to make ed tech cool, but this is a company that we started back in 2016 with this idea that 21st century skills are the most important thing for kids to learn in the 21st century. It was a very widely respected report from the World Economic Forum in 2015 that actually wrote about the 21st century skills that kids need to thrive. Things around learning skills like creativity, critical thinking, communication, literacy skills like financial literacy, environmental literacy, civics, the things that aren't really being taught in school. And arguably the most important are the life skills. Think about things like mindfulness, empathy, perseverance and grit, entrepreneurship, leadership. These are the things that every parent wants their kids to have. But the reality is they're really not being taught in schools. And so the whole idea of making a shift from the classroom into the living room so kids could learn these things, that was really the premise of the company. And then, we kind of paired that with this idea of the creator economy. When you think of all the different creators around the world that want to help kids learn, what if we could really harness that power of all those folks, we call these creator story teachers, and really bring them into one curated creator platform to really have a focused place that is safe for kids and, loved by parents, but it really is focused on 21st century skills.
Yeah, and as far as education, when I was growing up in the 1970s and the 80s in grade school, it was just a book. But you use a lot of other tools, video, audio, games, obviously books. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the multi-platform approach?
Sure. I think you talk to any parent, and I am a proud father of a 6-year-old boy and a 3.5-year-old girl. So I'm living this experience. Those are my beta testers at home. But the reality is we know that there needs to be a blended learning approach. It needs to be both digital and physical. And so, taking a lot of elements from Montessori-based, kind of learning where you actually have physical products, you actually have puzzles and games, but then you extend that experience into digital experiences that are interactive. And we all know that learning needs to be personalized. And so why on earth do you have the most incredible personalization technology being applied to content with Netflix or e-commerce with Amazon, but where you need personalization the most in learning and education, it's non-existent. And so that was really the premise. If we could actually fuse this idea of blended learning, digital and physical, working in harmony, that was something that we thought would be very relevant to both kids and families. And, the idea of having a multimodal approach in a digital platform, which is audio and video and interactive, books, interactive games, those are all ways that you can really start to personalize the learning experience for each child, where you can really understand a personalized learning journey for them. And that is something that we're just scratching the surface on as an industry.
I wanted to ask you what you have learned, either through beta testing at home, especially in a time of COVID. At The Hill, I'm always kind of challenging reporters and editors to get better in 6 months to a year. How have you gotten better? What has surprised you? What have you learned from that you didn't think, wow, that works or that doesn't work?
Well, I think the most, kind of surprising thing has been just the focus on the importance of education. I think what you saw throughout, kind of the pandemic over the past, call it 18 months, is that everyone really kind of underestimated the importance of teachers, the importance of learning, and more specifically, once 9 out of 10 kids around the planet were stuck at home, parents really started to see what are our kids learning. And they actually weren't learning these 21st century skills that parents know their kids need to learn. And so it became very eye-opening, not just what they were learning, but also how they were learning and from whom they were learning from. And so this is part of, kind of our mission around how do you democratize, diversify, and personalize learning at scale. I feel like you start to see all this incredible demand where if over 50% of kids in America today are diverse, but you do not see anything in terms of Black history being taught, Latino history, understanding, how do you actually have different types of teachers, different types of creators helping kids learn these subject matters that actually look like the kids, that look like America today. I feel like that was one of the most eye-opening experiences. And you see parents now demanding for representation. I mean, where is Black history truly taught? If you think about, most kind of public school education around Black history, it's kind of slavery, MLK, and Obama, and that's it. And, there really is no Latino history being taught at all. So these are all subject matter, kind of areas that parents deeply care about, and they are now demanding it. And there's also this kind of rise where parents are saying, you know what, we're going to take matters into our own hands. And that's part of the rise of, either enrichment or supplemental learning being done at home. There has been a complete increase, a boom in homeschooling, where homeschooling is actually not this kind of, backwater kind of concept. People are proactively taking learning into their own hands. And we're trying to figure out how to help those parents.
And where do you think it goes from here? I mean, what do you think that you said parents taking the issue into their own hands, but what can Congress do? What can states do to make sure that there is representation in education?
Well, it's actually one of the most important issues that I think we're facing as a nation. I mean, when you think about, kind of the whole idea of demographics is destiny, again, 50+% of kids today are diverse, and we need to figure out a way to make sure that those kids are being represented, that they're engaged. And this goes all the way up to Secretary Cardona. When you think of, Carmona, when you think of, where we are in education right now, there's all this investment being done, that has come from the federal level into states. And, a lot of these, kind of states are trying to figure out, how do I spend this money? Where is it going to go? How are we actually investing in these 21st century skills? And there are very few options that are out there. It's one of the reasons why we actually partnered with Arizona State University, with President Crow, who's been a complete innovator and pioneer in education. But, we partnered with them to really figure out how can we bring 21st century skills into curriculum for, call it kindergarten up to, kind of 5th grade level. And it's also a lot of the reasons why our Chief Impact Officer, Ana Maria Chavez, who used to be the CEO of the Girl Scouts and was formerly the CEO of the National School Board Association, she has joined Encantos to really lead this initiative to really figure out how can we really impact education at a public policy level so that they are incorporating 21st century skills across, state and federal levels. This is the AI era. We have to have kids learn these 21st century skills. It is not a nice to have, it is a must have. And so this really is a call to action. And at the federal level, they need to figure out ways to kind of bring in these new fundamentals for this fundamentally changed world.
What is we talked a little bit about it, but what is the role of technology? I mean, we're in Washington, D.C., and a lot of the media focuses on the so-called Acela corridor, where everybody has the internet. And in March of 2020, kids couldn't go to school, depending on what school and what district. But what people don't realize is that broadband is not everywhere. What have you learned as far as that really brings in disparities where some kids have a lot more tools than others, right?
1,000%. I mean, it is so eye-opening that there are over 20 million households in America that do not have any broadband access. So when you try to understand this digital divide that has just worsened, I mean, when you really think about it, we did not have just a lost school year in 2020. You're seeing the beginning of a lost school decade. And the kids that are being impacted, certainly kids of color, whether they're Latino or Black, whether they're in low-income communities, these kids are struggling to figure out how do they catch up. And it's not the kind of thing where, it's linear. It actually is a step function change in terms of education. If they are not getting these 21st century skills, in addition to the reading, writing, and arithmetic, how are they going to be able to compete? And so this now becomes an epidemic for our country, right? I mean, this is literally the future workforce of America. So we have to find a way to invest and reach out to these kids. And again, it has to be a blended learning approach. Some of it could be digital, but what if they don't have, a tablet or an iPhone or an Android phone? You need physical products as well. So you have to figure out, how do you have a learner-centered approach, learning through play? I mean, there's incredible research done by really great academics like Kathy Hurst-Pasek, who's at Temple University. She is really kind of the pioneer in learning through play research. There's incredible learning science around this, but you need this blended learning approach. And not everything is going to be with a device, but in the areas where you can actually have a device, wow, the impact and the personalized learning is so powerful. It's part of the reason why we're trying to kind of make sure that we're having creators create things that are going to really address these needs and these gaps. I mean, if you think about it, 30+% of kids in America are Latino, and there is nothing around bilingual learning. And so we actually created the #1 bilingual preschool property called Canticos, and that is now being adopted by teachers across the country. And we, as a public benefit corp, we actually provide a lot of our, kind of either worksheets or resources for free for teachers and families. So again, there are lots of different ways that people could step up, but this is something where everyone needs to participate at the government, business, technology companies, but absolutely technology plays a very powerful role in reaching these kids.
When I came to Washington in the mid-1990s, everything, not everything was partisan. Healthcare and taxes were really education and infrastructure. Some other issues, defense, was not. But we have such a polarized country, and now education. There's politics, so much in education. Is there any hope to get the politics out? Because it seems to be a huge distraction for the bottom line of the children.
So I feel like this is, certainly such a sensitive topic. There's wishful thinking and then there's reality. And, I'm a Dominican kid that was born and raised in the Bronx, from New York. You say what you mean and mean what you say. I feel like we have to have real talk when it comes to this. The politics, at the national school board level, certainly Ana Maria Chavez dealt with a lot of this over the past, kind of 2 years during COVID, the politicization of these school boards. There's just no place for it. And, when you're messing with education, when you're messing with kids, that for me is, just third rail. You're not allowed to do that. It has to be completely devoid of politics. And the fact that folks are letting this happen, it must stop, because the folks that are being harmed are the kids. And the reality is the face of the consumer has changed. The face of America has changed. And so if you have an America that is truly a multicultural nation, when you have, again, 50+% of kids being diverse, they need to be able to see themselves. They need to be able to learn differently. And also the things that they need to learn has changed. And so it can't just be Common Core. You have to have this enrichment and this supplemental learning. So the politics really has no place in it, but to really focus on the child. When you really think of a learner-centered approach, there is no role for politics. And so if you really focus on talk to teachers, talk to the caretakers, talk to the families, what is it that they actually want for their kids? They want them to learn 21st century skills, and every parent has the same challenge. How do I prepare my child to be successful in and out of school? It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. And so I have just no patience and no tolerance for the politics and for all the BS that happens around that. This is something where you cannot mess around with your kids' education.
Stephen, you've got a noble job and an important one, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having us.